I don't know that anyone, no, I'm going to change that. I know that you can't be taught um, the influence and the power and the mind change that comes from having a kid, though. So I agree with you on the education. I don't, I just, it's not possible. So these people who say, well, I have a dog and I get to travel to the south of France every year and you're stuck with your kids. And I'm like, I'm so much richer than you. You have no idea. The poorest man in the world with children is richer than Elon Musk without children. And there's no way to know that. You can fight back on that all you want. But I always say, I was laying in a hospital bed dying at 310 pounds in November 21st of 2021. And I was at 100 mini heart attacks every day. I have this 40% block in my left ventricle. I was born with it, popped up out of nowhere, sat in my DNA. Long story short, I got fat. I was taking 19 meds a day. Again, 200 milligrams of opioids every day. And I was like, I ain't going out like this, man. I did all of these things. I crawled out of the gutter. I'm not going like this. And in that hospital, I said, I'm going to make a change. January 1st, I started eating 1,800 calories, all carnivore diet. I lost 100 pounds in 8.5 months. At 57, I put on 30 pounds of muscle. I'm in the best shape of my life. I did that because I went and found somebody who had been fat and then got healthy and looks and sounds and speaks and talks like I wanted to when I was 310 pounds and dying. So he had been there. He hadn't been fit his entire life. He had been healthy, and then he had gotten fat, and then he changed his life years ago. So he had a perspective on what I was going through. And so I say to people, business, life, health, if you want to know how to be married for 30 years successfully and what goes into that, go find someone who's been married for 30 years and talk to them. If you want to be an entrepreneur successfully, go find someone who is where you are or has been where you want to go and talk to them. That's important. You can learn these lessons in life, I think, on all of those topics, and you would be wise to do it. And I think that's what you're talking about, by going and having conversations with people who have come before you and have the knowledge that you don't have, or the wherewithal and the experience that you can rely on. That ends, though, I think, at having children. There is no way for me to accurately reflect, as emotional as I get about it, as angry as I will preach it, right? There's no way for me to convey to anyone who doesn't have children the impact of what having kids has. And I always like to say, I am poor, white, street trash by every emphasis of that word, every definition, I should say, of that word, emphasis added on poor white trash. And my son was born at 28, and it 180 degrees changed the direction of my life. There is nothing else in the world that can, it's not a pill I can give you. I think that you can understand the power, the mind opening, the experience that gives you. To your point, that you can do things unimaginable to you. I always say, Josh, and then I'll shut up. If I put a gun to your, Jerry, I can't go to the gym every day. We'll use a certain one. I said, okay, if I put a gun to your mother's head, and if you don't go to the gym in the morning and you don't work out for an hour, I'm going to pull the trigger. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to go to the gym every day. So you telling me you can't go to the gym is not true. That's your mind telling you you can't go to the gym. Go do whatever thing it is that you should go do. Get an education, whatever. If I put a gun to your mom's head, you're going to go do it. So the ability to do all of these things is within all of us. I just think the key to the biggest benefit and the largest superpower is having children. And that one you have to experience. I can't put a gun to your mother's head to teach you that.
Yeah, I'll say two things on this. Number one is, you're right. There are certain things in life that are just experiential, and you cannot trade that. And having kids is definitely one of them. I would say that there is preparation for the experiences, right? There
Sure.
are things that you can learn in order to make sure that when you have that experience, that you can actually internalize and accept it rather than reject it and ignore it and just completely miss it, which I'll say 95% of people miss most experiences that they can have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they aren't trained to see it. It's like when you're going to buy a new car, and maybe it's a blue Ford Raptor, and now all of a sudden you see blue Ford Raptors everywhere.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, top of mind. The second thing is speaking to what we're capable of, and I love that you brought that up. Do you know about the rat experiment? Have you heard about that?
No, tell me about it. Well, maybe I have. I'm not sure.
So it speaks to belief, right? And it speaks to what we think we're capable of, and in what capacity. So there was this guy. He did a study on rats. It was like in the 1950s or something, I think. I'm going to butcher this, so just be forewarned. He dropped a rat in a bucket, essentially, just to see how long the rat could swim. Just a standard rat. Rat swam for about 15 minutes and gave up and drowned. Okay. And so he wanted to see what the rat would do if it believed that there was a chance that it could be saved. So he did the experiment. He dropped the rat in the bucket, but right before the rat drowned, he would pick it up and he would save it, dry it off, put it back in. Did this a couple of times. The rat swam longer than 15 minutes when it believed that there was essentially a light at the end of the tunnel, that there was
Mhm.
something that could be done. Do you know how long that rat swam for after this
I,
experiment?
yeah, I do know this story. So, but yes, tell us.
Yeah, so most people say, "Oh, well, it was probably an hour." It was like
It's
four times
crazy.
as long. No, it was 60 hours. It was
60
two and a
hours.
half days.
Yeah.
And the only thing that changed, the rat didn't work out, the rat didn't go to the gym, the rat did not
Right.
get stronger in order to swim longer. All it did was believe that if it swam longer, it was going to survive.
Yeah.
And so that's just another lens for people to look through when I say that you have to be prepared to have experiences, right? You have to train yourself to understand and to believe that having a kid is going to change your life, right? But
Yeah.
without that narrative, sometimes it can be missed. As shitty as that sounds, dude, like
Yeah.
there are people out there which I would probably qualify as horrible people,
Yeah.
right? That they have kids and it means fucking nothing.
Right.
And I can't tell you where I classify those people in the rankings of society, but it makes you wonder, is it innate, or is it something that at a young age, if they were prepared to see the world in a different way, they would value that experience?
Yeah. Yeah. The I agree with that. And in particular, again, we're generalizing, but if you're asking me how you want to improve your life or get better, and you're 22 years old and you're coming to a village elder like you or me, this is my advice on how to do that. I'm not talking to the white trash POS that's having kids and then ignores them, or the Wall Street guy that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and knocks up some girlfriend on the weekend that he just doesn't care about. I'm not talking to those people anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's not who we want to talk to. The interesting thing about that rat experiment, on that one in particular too, is they not only picked it up out of the water, they wrapped it in a towel and they moved it around and they talked to it. They whispered in
Yeah.
its ear. And they were
Yeah.
very nice to it. Yeah, it's really interesting, that thing. And then put it back in there. And that mouse was like, or that rat was like, I want more of that, man. And I'll just go forever
Yeah.
if I'm going
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
more of that. The thing I like about the blue collar approach to industry, and your communication, there was a word in doing my research on you that you used that I think is something that could be talked more about, and that is emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
I think that emotional intelligence is again a superpower. I always say, one of my superpowers is I have no emotion. So I'm not emotional about, there's no money in emotion. And back to my mother saying, and I'm the rock that I would be the rock that everybody would crash against. She's absolutely true, because I don't commiserate. I don't have to get into it. And as a manager of over 10,000 people over my almost 30 years in business, my one message is always to a manager, to an owner: get people to do what you want them to do. Let them think it's their idea.
Hmm.
No ego, right? Let them
Yeah.
have all of the praise. You gave them the idea, you put out the blueprints. It does not matter. As long as you're getting what you want done, let them have all the praise. Now, I think that takes a big ego, not a small one. A small ego can be hurt. A big ego with humility, I think, is very powerful. But the emotional intelligence, in particular for blue collar workers, is not something that we get to exposed to a lot. And so I gravitated towards that when I saw that and thought I would give you an opportunity to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, we've got to be very careful with the verbiage we use in the blue collar space, right?
Yeah.
Because they hear a term like emotional intelligence and then immediately shut down. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of them lack emotional intelligence, and it's not by any fault of their own, but it is an incredible skill. I actually do talks on this regularly about the power of emotional intelligence, and the role that it plays in success. There's been studies done on this that, people with high emotional intelligence are more likely to earn more money, are more likely to be promoted, are more likely to be looked up to in a leadership perspective, and so it can't be overlooked. And it doesn't have to be this, sappy bullshit. It really truly is just the ability to understand people. Because at the end of the day, who wants to work with somebody who doesn't get people?
Hmm.
And to your point, I also have a phrase that I use, and it's people accept what they conclude and they resist what they're told. And so, in the spirit of emotional intelligence, asking the right question, right, as a leader with that high ego and giving that praise is imperative. It's absolutely imperative, because you can go give directives all day long, like you're, one of the 300, and tell people to march off of a cliff for you.
Right.
But it's a whole nother thing when you can understand what it is they're struggling with and then ask them thought-provoking questions to lead them to an answer that you never gave a directive for. If you can successfully do that, not only will they thank you 1,000 times, you have something to praise them for that they actually did, and then they solve their own damn problem, so they don't come to you again and again and again. And the root of this is exactly what you said. It's the emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it's not something that we're taught, and I think for anybody listening, particularly in the trades, I have a nephew that's just gone into HVAC, and he's got on at one of the biggest places here in Nashville, and he's learning his way up, and this is what he wants to do. Ultimately, he's got a plan. He's going to stick to it for 5 years, and then he's going to go start his own company. So he's got it all drawn out. And one of the things that I tell him is that, and he's young, he's a good-looking kid, he can talk, he looks you in the eye, he's a good Southern boy. I know a lot of tradesmen who have the personality of a rat. I mean, they just cannot communicate.
Yeah.
They have zero EQ, right? I can hardly stand to be around them, and they do very, very well. So in that environment, if you can learn to talk and deal with other people, these guys, and they just go through people left and right, and nobody will stay working for them. And yet, in spite of themselves, they're still successful. And I always think to myself, how much more successful would you be if you just got out of your own way, if you weren't the focal point of everything that you're doing, if it didn't have to be all about you? And so I think the emotional intelligence, and why I want to bring it up, is a big, big tool that is an impediment, or excuse me, a big tool that is not used, or an impediment that is placed in front of so many tradesmen operators. Really anybody, though. This goes across the board because everybody could work on this. But we're talking about tradesmen in particular, that would only add to their business if they could just get out of their own way and learn the tricks that come from a high EQ.
Yeah. And that's the entire reason why I started the Academy. It's sold as an employee development tool for blue collar business owners to deploy to their front lines. And this is exactly the type of stuff that we teach. It's the communication, the leadership, the initiative, the emotional intelligence, all of this kind of stuff. Because here's the narrative. Right, we talked about college earlier on the show, but most of the blue collar workers that are in the business today are in the business because somebody at some point told them that they were not smart enough to go to college.
Yeah.
And right, and what this created was
Yeah.
an identity in themselves that they're worthless, or that they can't do this stuff, or that they don't have this emotional intelligence, or it can't be learned, or all this kind of stuff. And then in turn, nobody invested into them. Not until they were being considered for a leadership or management position, which coincidentally, right, ironically, we don't usually consider those people unless they have emotional intelligence.
Right.
So it's
Right.
this cycle that we see specifically in the blue collar skilled trades. I'm sure it exists in other industries as well. But that lack of emotional intelligence holds people back from their
Yeah.
true capability.
Yeah, like being a stock trader is somehow harder than going to work every day and figuring out what the problem is with the plumbing 10 feet underneath of a house, for God's sake.
Right.
It's a bastardization of reality by social media and culture. And this lends it to my last question for you. Working with all of those younger guys, this is a great segue. What do you think young men specifically are starving for right now that they're not getting from modern culture?
That's a good question.
I'll give you my answer while you think about it.
Yeah, sure.
You think about it. I think that young men and I've been talking to a lot of young men. I talk to them constantly. I think that they're starving for permission to be men, to think like men, to operate like men, to react like men, to push back against commercials that show them at 40 years old crying in their car before they go in the house, right? They want to be told it's okay to open a door for a girl, that it's okay to go on a date. It's okay to want to be a father, to have children. It's okay to want to have a career. It's okay to not go do the things that society tells us to do. I think they're starving to let them be innately who they are, and the culture pushes back on them. It's a little bit broader, I think, but I think to try to generalize that is men, young men, are looking for permission to be what they want, or to be who they are, rather than what again, our overly feminized culture we have today is telling them that they should be.
I'll take it a step further than that. I think they're looking for a reason to not have to ask for permission. I think that is because I think you're right. I think that they are looking for permission, but the bigger game there is, why do they need it? So maybe what they think they're after is that permission, but what they actually need is to act without it.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. I wouldn't disagree with that. Unfortunately, we've raised now generations of kids who are used to doing what they're told.
Yeah,
right?
well, of course. I mean, I thank you
As
for
a
the
Gen
school
Xer,
systems on that.
As a Gen Xer, what you said really resonates, right? We never listened to anything anybody ever told us. So
Sure,
yeah,
that makes sense.
I'm with you 100%.